Hey guys, in this video we will discuss the trig ratios of sine, cosine, and tangent. So a quick background information. If we have a right triangle, all right, like this, let's say, we are going to have two acute angles and a 90-degree angle, a right angle. So let's pick one of the acute angles and call it theta. All right, so everything else I say will be from the perspective of this angle. So first of all, we have to decide which of these is opposite, which of these sides of the triangle is adjacent to angle theta, and which one of these is the hypotenuse. So of course the hypotenuse is the hypotenuse regardless of what angle you're talking about. So this is the hypotenuse, which is always across from the 90-degree angle. Now, the word adjacent means next to. Okay, it means right next to. So between these two remaining sides, the side that is right next to the angle is right here. So this would be the adjacent side. All right, and then when we talk about the opposite leg, opposite means across from. Okay, so the leg that is opposite angle theta, in other words, the leg that is across from angle theta, is this one. So this will be opposite. All right. So once you have decided which leg is opposite, which leg is adjacent, and which side of the triangle is the hypotenuse, then you can define your trig functions. And it's going to go like this. Sine of angle theta is going to be opposite over hypotenuse. And I'm just going to abbreviate. All right, but that's opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine of angle theta is going to be the adjacent leg over the hypotenuse. And tangent of angle theta is going to be the opposite leg over the adjacent leg. So you just need to go ahead and memorize this. Memorize these three facts. Sometimes you will hear them use the device and say Sohcahtoa. All right, and the idea of Sohcahtoa is simply that, hey, if you look at these, the first three, that's sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over adjacent. But if you put it all together, that spells Sohcahtoa, and that might help you remember the rules. Okay, for now I'm going to pretend that you have memorized as you should. Okay, so from the perspective of angle D, then of course the 53 is the hypotenuse no matter what. The 28 is opposite, right, because that's across from angle D. The 45 is adjacent because it's right next to angle D. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so that's going to be 28 over 53. Okay, the cosine of angle D, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, so that's going to be 45 over 53. And tangent is opposite over adjacent, so that should be 28 over 45. Okay, now for B, D, and F, you know what, I guess I was supposed to go A, B, C, D like that. But I did all these because they were all pertaining to angle D. And so notice that now I'm switching over to the perspective of angle E. So that's going to change a couple things. So from the perspective of angle E, all right, of course the hypotenuse is still the hypotenuse, so that's not going to change. But 28 is now right next to angle E. So 28 is the adjacent leg. Adjacent means right next to. The 45 is the one that is opposite angle E. Opposite means across from. Okay, so that's the opposite of what we had when we were looking at angle D. So now that we have everything labeled, sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So that would be 45 over 53. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So that'll be 28 over 53. And tangent is opposite over adjacent. So that'll be 45 over 28. Problem number 2 is the same thing again. Be careful in case we have to reduce. So you see the 90-degree angle. Across from that is the 61. That means the 61 is the hypotenuse no matter what. So these three on the left are all angle L. So let's start off from the perspective of angle L. 11 would be adjacent, because adjacent means right next to angle L. The 60 would be opposite, because opposite means across from angle L. Now tangent is defined as opposite over adjacent. So the tangent of L will be 60 over 11. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so that would be 60 over 61. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, so that's 11 over 61. All right, now we need to talk about angle K. So we need to change our perspective. All right, from the perspective of angle K, okay, 61 is still the hypotenuse, that doesn't change. But this 60 is right next to angle K, so that makes this the adjacent leg. All right, the 11 is across from angle K. That makes it the opposite leg. So tangent is opposite over adjacent, so that's 11 over 60. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so that's going to be 11 over 61. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, so that will be 60 over 61. All right, number 3 is the same thing, but you notice we're missing a side here. We're going to have to find that ourselves by doing the Pythagorean Theorem. So let's do that real quick. So the Pythagorean Theorem says a squared plus b squared is going to equal to c squared. And this is leg squared plus leg squared equals hypotenuse squared. So it is the hypotenuse that we're looking for. So like this is the, the c value that we're looking for. So we're talking about 10 squared plus 24 squared is going to equal the hypotenuse squared. So that's 100 plus, all right, 576 is equal to c squared. If I add these up, that's going to give me 676 is equal to c squared. And of course, then I need to take the square root of both sides. All right, and it turns out that c is equal to 26. All right, so great. So now we know that the hypotenuse is 26. So now we can finish this problem the same way we did before. You see the 90-degree angle. That means this 26 is the hypotenuse, all right? It's across from the 90-degree angle. So this first set here, they're talking about angle R. So from the perspective of angle R, see how the 10 is right next to it? That means it is adjacent. All right, see how the 24 is across from it? That means that that is opposite. So cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So that's going to be 10 over 26, which reduces down to 5 over 13. Okay, tangent is opposite over adjacent. So that's going to be 24 over 10. So that's going to be 12 over 5. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So that's going to be 24 over 26. So that's going to be 12 over 13. All right, now the rest of these are from the perspective of angle T. So that's going to change a couple things. So from the perspective of angle T, see how the 24 is right next to this? That makes it adjacent. Adjacent means right next to. And see how the 10 is across from angle T? That makes it opposite. Okay, so cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So that's going to be 24 over 26, which reduces down to 12 over 13. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. So that's going to be 10 over 24, which reduces to 5 over 12. And sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so that's going to be 10 over 26, which reduces down to 5 over 13. Number 4, use this triangle for the questions that follow. Use the 3 known trig ratios to fill in the 3 unknown ratios. Okay, so these 3 on the left are written from the perspective of angle E. Okay, so from the perspective of angle E, first of all, the hypotenuse is always the hypotenuse no matter what. So that's definitely the hypotenuse is across from the 90-degree angle. So between the remaining 2 legs, see how this leg is right next to angle E? It is adjacent. All right, adjacent means right next to. See how this leg is across from angle E? That means it is the opposite leg. Now, we know that the sine function is opposite over hypotenuse. Okay, let me just change colors here for a second. So that means 4 is the opposite leg. All right, so this should be 4. And 5 is the hypotenuse. So that's going to be 5. Okay, it is useful to memorize the Pythagorean triple 3, 4, 5. If I know that, so this would be like leg, hypotenuse. So if I know if this leg is 4 and then the hypotenuse is 5, I know that this other leg is going to be 3. But now, if you did not have that memorized, you definitely would need to do the Pythagorean Theorem to figure that out really quick. So this would be like A. All right, I'm thinking of a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So this would be a squared plus 4 squared is equal to 5 squared. So a squared plus 16 is equal to 25. Subtracting 16 from both sides, I get a squared is equal to 9. Take the square root of both sides, I get a is equal to 3, which was what I was saying before. So fine. So using the Pythagorean Theorem, I found out that this is 3. So now I should be able to say what the tangent is, because tangent is opposite over adjacent, so that'll be 4 over 3. Okay, so that was one of the ones we were supposed to find. Okay, now the tangent of angle D. So I'm going to change the labeling here. All right, this is not going to change the side lengths. All right, we can still use that information. But from the perspective of angle D, all right, see how this side is right next to angle D? That makes this now the adjacent side. This side is across from angle D. That makes this the opposite side. And the hypotenuse is the hypotenuse no matter what. So the sine of angle D. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So that will be 3 over 5. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So that will be 4 over 5. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. So we can just confirm that that is 3 over 4, just like we thought. All right, but anyway, these are the three that we had to find. Use the trig ratios from part A to label the lengths of all three sides on the triangle above. Okay, I feel like we automatically did that. Look at number 5. Okay, we've got these acute angles P and Q. All right, when you have the two acute angles inside of the same right triangle, they are complementary. And the way this works is that the sine of one angle is going to always equal the cosine of the other angle. Okay, so the sine of angle P will equal the cosine of angle Q, and vice versa. The cosine of angle P is going to equal the sine of angle Q. And that makes sense because, I mean, just imagine that this was a, let's say this was a 3, 4, 5 triangle. So let's say that was 5, that was 3, this was 4. Think about it. The sine of angle P, that would be opposite over hypotenuse. So that would be 3/5. And then think about the cosine of angle Q, the cosine of the other angle. So now from the perspective of Q, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, but that would also be 3 over 5. So of course this is true. So down here we're just looking for that to happen. What trig ratio must be the same as the sine of angle P? Well, it should be the cosine of angle Q. All right? The sine of one angle will equal the cosine of the other acute angle. All right, which trig ratio must be the same as the cosine of P? Well, the cosine of P should equal the sine of the other acute angle, the sine of Q. So it should be this one. Part C, label two sides of the triangle above to show cosine of P equal to 40 over 41. So they're mentioning angle P. That means everything I say is going to have to be from the perspective of angle P. So focus on angle P. Now we know that the definition of cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So the hypotenuse needs to be 41. So this is the hypotenuse across from the 90-degree angle. And the 40 needs to be the adjacent side. So is it going to go here or will it go here? Well, adjacent means right next to. So the 40, the adjacent side, will be here. All right, the side way over here is the opposite side, the opposite leg. And that's it. We were just supposed to label the two sides that would make this true. And there you go. Now, use the Pythagorean Theorem to find and label the length of the third side. Show your work. So let me change colors. And we're going to use the Pythagorean Theorem to find the other side. So, a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. Leg squared plus leg squared equals hypotenuse squared. That's the Pythagorean Theorem. So you get 1,600 plus b squared is equal to 1,681. If I subtract 1,600 from both sides, that's going to leave me with b squared is equal to 81. So, of course, if I take the square root of both sides, that's going to leave me with b is equal to 9. So, the other side must be 9. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this video. Go ahead and click here in the red apple to watch the next video. Click in the green apple to subscribe, or click the yellow apple for the full playlist.